Oh, this is the update video for
September. Studios, September.
2023. We're going to do something a little different. The previous update videos, we just talked about what we did during the month, but it's gotten to a point where we're going to try something that checks off a few boxes for us in terms of like, so much of this has been me writing things on the side, and very occasionally we talk about something. But most of the time it's me writing things. So we were like, how do we get something to a point where Anthony can read it and it's like mostly done to get back into the groove of the story now that a bunch of stuff is written. One way of doing that is I'm going to have to start revising things. So if we find a chunk in a story that is written, then I can revise it to a point where, and he can read it and know what the story is like for that chunk, and it'll be like close to done or whatever, and then we can bring it to a level that is satisfactory, that has that's kind of like in the middle of nowhere, instead of trying to revise the whole book and then figuring out, oh, these scenes could all be elevated or like have certain different qualities to them or whatever it is. By going over it together in the middle of a chunk, we can bring something to that level so I know what it's supposed to be before doing the whole book that way. So it kind of like sets a bar, but as well with setting that bar, to look at other stories that are partially outlined or don't have much content in them, or even are somewhat complete but not fully, and making those scenes as well, like kind of parallel scenes, or like scenes that are equivalents but in their own stories, that the one that we are working on, that it like is from a done book, if I write those equivalent scenes to other books that aren't done, it can at least give us like a resource to elevate the bar further for the one that's being done, since there's nothing else to cross-reference. So one thing that I did was find other books that have a similar structure among the 16 or something that we've randomized via throwing dice, that can actually have parallel scenes with the current one, the one that I wrote, like the first book that I wrote. Because then some of the other books, like for example, World 27, Roma Growing Fungal Gusto, it's just a road trip adventure. They never go to the same spot twice, and they're meeting new people along the way every single time. That is not really going to cross-reference well with Crushed by Ruckus and the Current, which is like a bunch of people at a spot, and they're going to a different spot, back to that spot, go to a different spot, back to that spot, and they don't really meet like new people constantly. So I found other books of those 16 that we randomized that have that structure, that will have cross-reference scenes of like the little batch of characters from that spot go on an adventure somewhere. If that's like one of the scenes that we end up picking and looking at, that is like, hey, this would be a cool one to bring to a revision stage to level up with, like talking about it and figuring out how to make it better and like how much more cool stuff can we jam in here, etc. And we like use that as the reference to raise that bar. Then we can look at the other books, and there's actually going to be an equivalent scene that we can use as a reference point to keep elevating that as well. So yeah, and that'll help work on things like voice, or like what the book sounds like, and all those other nuances that wouldn't be possible with just one.
And so we're going to actually work on stuff on camera, like we've done in the past a lot in our behind-the-scenes footage.
Yeah, a couple of years ago we did this almost daily.
Yeah.
Like every couple days, an hour video or something. That's what all the behind-the-scenes packages on Gumroad are like full of, is just hours and hours.
That's why this is called I think it's called a package update even, this video.
We just haven't made one of those in 2 years. So this is similar to what we used to do, but now we're at a new phase where there's actually enough book done and whatever that we're going to try starting again, or at least figure it out. And then ideally, I don't know if it's going to be possible, but by the end of this month to have 3 or 4, like the book that's done, the chunk that we were going to look at, revised and talked about and brought up to a level so that we can talk about it more and see if we can elevate it more. And I'm going to write 3 entirely new chunks that we can talk about or something too. Who knows what will happen with those. But figure out how to, none of those books are written. So bring them up too and just see what happens. But yeah. So I was thinking that probably the best way of doing this, this is just the whole outline for Crushed by Direction of the Current. That's probably the thing we'll look at. This is, it doesn't have Act 1 to 3 here, but this is like, Act 1 is like these little chunks, Act 2 is like these little chunks, and Act 3 is down there. That's missing here. But these are kind of like, Act 5, Chapter 15 would be a chunk in here where FUD is, there's like a class or practice or training or whatever, that's just like a summary of what happens in that scene. So it's like, FUD barely survives something, or FUD is prepping for the coming adventures, and like, so when we get to that scene, and it's like, this seems like a cool scene, let's revise and figure out how to make this chunk the coolest. We'll look at what it actually is. I think I might have it written in some sections there, but then it's like, okay, the point of view wants to get back into action really fast after something happened. And then we can look at the other stories and be like, what is something that can happen in this that the character would be like, I want to get back into action, and then we just write that equivalent scene, and then then that's how we can compare the dynamics of like, FUD wanting to get back into action. Why does that feel good? Why is it like a cool scene? Because you're not going to have the context for the rest of the book either, which is kind of cool. Because it's going to be like, just this scene has to capture that feel, and then when writing something fresh, if I write like the character coming in, if that feels better. Then it's like, okay, how do we make this one feel better? Like, what's working and what's not. So we can probably just whip through the whole FUD outline. We don't have to read all this because it's just, most of these notes probably don't make any sense. Like, team deliver and spawnders split for more deliveries. Like, that's just a note for me to remember what's in that scene. So I'll just like go through that quick. And then when we come
I get the gist of it because I know some of,
Yeah. So maybe as I'm reading through this or whatever, you can take a note on like what section stood out as like, this would be a cool part to go over, and at the end we'll look at each of those and then pick one. You can go from there. This is the outline to the first 4 books, but they're all just crammed together. So this is how I kind of figured out. It doesn't really work. It kind of works cross-referencing, like it actually does work pretty well, but it's not quite the same. But yeah, it actually kind of lines up. And what else is here? This is just the Act 1 stuff. We don't need this. And this is the kind of the thing setting-wise, like all the times they go to the markets, I wrote down like the act and chapter that FUD's at the markets. Like just color-coded it to see like where they go and how many times they go to the same places. This is a reference. I don't know if it's going to be useful at all, but I wanted to do it to see a visual. Okay. So, the first act is FUD is on a floating island with Ilva, Verdandi, and Ruckus, and they're crossing the ocean. They go to, they just need to find a beacon tower, which is like a giant beam of light that will show them that this is kind of the barrier of where Current Canyon begins, and gravity starts to get weird, and like nothing makes sense. So they're looking for that. They find one. While they're doing that, FUD is tuning to the float pad to make it float, and she's kind of mildly instructing the sisters on how to like do certain things. They're trying to tune up and get really skilled for when they show up in Current Canyon, and then they rush to the beacon tower. So basically, like they fold space time and teleport there or something, and then they have one final night on the float pad, and then they chase. Who is, spoiler for anybody watching this, but it's Veviech. They chase Veviech a bit, who's just traveling across the ocean too.
Pretty much all of this is spoilers.
Yeah. So that's Act 1. Act 2, they get directions from...
Why do they chase Veviech?
They just see this giant vortex rock thing. They think it's like a gullen, or like, a gullen is like a big, giant hermit crab that lives in like a gravity vortex, and they're like, hey, and then they chase it. But they can't keep up with it. But it actually ends up being Veviech later. Act 2, they get directions from a man on shore, from a spark, but that's Noah. They reach land and leave their float pad, and then they find things like they get on shore, and they've been on an ocean for like a couple of days, and then they rush on shore, and they are woozy because they've been the reverse of seasick or whatever, and they like vomit and things. Have to find a place to rest. They go to like a fountain with for Ruckus to drink. They see Colia Satellite, which is a giant flying island in the distance that they want to go to. They find a map to get to Ikotoa. And then they go down these slides kind of through the water walls, and they meet this lady Denda who like they pass a few people, and then Fudd's like, that person is really well tuned, like deeply tuned. That's the kind of person they're looking for, because they're looking for basically teachers that can teach them how to do things, and like just highly tuned people. And then Verdandi asks Denda where she comes from, and like where she's going. Next one, there's like a time skip where Fudd wakes up in Ikotoa, and she's like dizzy, and the sisters couldn't stay there, and it's been like a couple days, and they had to leave, and they can't even remember what was going on. Like, it's just too high vibration for them to function. Fudd runs into Noah, and then she regroups with the sisters, and they found out where Denda lives and how to get there and stuff like that, so they're going to go to this town called Pothostone instead. And then they go through the sides again to get to Pothostone, and it's like this giant crescent moon shaped valley with multiple other valleys around it, and they're going to go live there and go meet Denda the next morning. That's Act 1. So we can go probably just do like a chapter. So like this is not divided the way a normal book would be. So Act 1, Chapter 1 was what occurrence, and all those are the scenes. So Act 1, Chapter 2, and a bunch of scenes. So we'll just we'll do like one chapter, and then write like it's like 2 to 6 scenes in that. That's what we'll do, instead of like trying to revise the whole chunk.
Yeah. What am I looking for again? Like when we're going through this, like just when you say like jot down things.
Just what chunk of the story, like a chapter.
Yeah.
According to this, is the one that would be fun to kind of like basically read as a finished thing, and then revise, and then bring to a finish line.
Right now, what sticks out to me was the rushing to the beacon tower as like a scene. And I guess maybe just the intro, maybe because I'm just familiar with it, but also because I feel like that it introduces, like what I understand from that scene of when she's, tuning and she's guiding them to do stuff or whatever on the island as they're moving, and then rushing to the tower. It's all like basically really, not that the other ones aren't, but I feel like it's really LV style, where it's like lots of mental like stuff going on, and it's like, why you're rushing to the tower? It's like because she wants to, she has wants to beat it or something, like and it's just like
what could be good here. It's probably good not to do the intro, but there will be scenes that have that similar vibe, and to pick out one of those, but also. That's the kind of thing where it's almost like when we look at one of these, if it has something cool like that, because some of them might
have a similar thing.
Have a similar thing of just like, this sounds like it could be really cool, and then the point of us working on it is to bring it to that level, like that perceived level of LV-ness of whatever it is.
But that's what stuck out to me so far. But cool. It makes sense not to do the intro.
Act 2, Chapter 4. So Fudd goes solo she's looking for Noah, or a guy with gold bag. Assumes that he's in this area. She sees like hill forts, beetles, bunch of random stuff. Finds the silver crab course, and then finds scouts. Scouts are like wizards or something. She follows a boy, Gem, and scouts Raimi and Sharmarke to a course, Silver Crab, which is where Emeralda would teach and stuff, and then ends up stalking them and ends up like destroying her dress while going through these swampy, gross areas to basically follow them without being seen. And then she's like, I was going to call the sisters over here, but this place is disgusting, and I need to go get new clothes. And she was going to meet them at the markets anywhere where Denda works, so she's going to go there. Chapter 5. She regroups with the sisters at the market, meets Denda in the decoration class. They're like doing sculpting and things like that. Fernandy's very sociable, and they learn about like the scouts, the like how plants work and how water walls work, get directions to things. They're looking for housing, classes to learn things, and Fudd needs clothes. And then they go get clothes and new gear and stuff for that. It's kind of like learning about the local valleys. That's what that one's all about. Chapter 6. They get to Silver Crab. This is the course that starts with glassy caverns, water walls, and snowy. And they go on glassy quite a few times throughout the book. Caverns only a couple times. Water wall, I think, once. And then snowy at the very, very end. But glassy is like a giant... like if the valleys are kind of shaped like this, glassy is like a giant frozen glass chunk in the middle that's malleable. So that's like the course that they're going through, kind of like as a practice beginner course. Hahabe, I might change his name because it's weird, really weird.
Hahabe.
Yeah, I was thinking Halabe, just that could be easier. And Gem are there. They go through the course. The sisters need help, so Halabe and Gem are helping out a lot, and Fudd basically follows Emeraldu and them to like study up how, like, why are they good, and how to beat Glassy. Chapter 7. They have a circle sit, Hajime style, around a thingy. Then Aralove arrives, and she's basically made a fire, but nobody notices except Fudd because she can sense it from like miles away. Then Fudd, while they're having the circle sit, Ilva wants to pee in the river, or she wants to go to the bathroom. So she asks if she can pee in the river, which is like when you jump down off of Glassy, there's like this river that's going upstream to like down through the valleys. So she's like, can I jump down there and pee in there? And they're like, yeah, sure. So Halabe and shows Ilva where she can jump off, and then they like fall in the river and go upstream. So Fudd chases after to see where they go, and then when Aralove is leaving, like everybody's distracted with Ilva's antics and all this other stuff, Aralove leaves as a ball of fire, so Fudd is like, I felt that, so chases Aralove. Doesn't get to find her, so tells the sisters, like, it's confirmed we're going to stay here, and the Ease, Emeraldu, and Aralove are going to be our teachers. We got to weave our way into their lives. So they basically attack Gem, and they're like, Gem, give us housing, give us all our stuff. Act 3, Chapter 8. They do their first delivery for the Ease in this pond area. Then they split to...
for the Ease.
Yeah. Then they split. Fudd goes with Ruckus, and then Ilva and Verdandi go somewhere else. And Fudd finds a vortex, like deep down this abyss in the middle of like this jungle area. It's kind of like a thing that's puts her in like a stasis lock on the outside, and she has to like push through, and it's like pitch black, weird stuff. And she ends up destroying her new dress already. But Ruckus kind of pulls her out of it to like get her to safety. But it's like a vortex. That's the thing that she's kind of hunting. She wants to like go do these vortexes, which are almost like Pillar Reality obstacle course nonsenses in the jungle. But there's like one just way down, but she can't get to it, especially with Ruckus there. So then she leaves. But she's like, I gotta go mark this spot. So she makes she's gonna make a crab cloud. But then somebody pops the cloud. It's actually Jihu. You don't find out till later. But somebody pops her cloud. And she's like, what's the deal? So she chases that person up these valleys. And then can't find them. So she's like, I need to work on my skills. And then she goes back to Gem's farm where she was going to meet the sisters. And she sees Emeraldu and Scouts doing wizardry stuff. And she's like, now what the hell is Emeraldu up to? I need to learn how to do this too. She's basically just like, I need to figure out so much crap. So she goes back down, and Gem and Verdandi return to the farm, and they're all going to work on the farm and do stuff. And then Aralove arrives and teaches them some basic stamp stuff, but she's going to go like bake potatoes for all the farmers. Shenanigans like that. So it's kind of like that chapter is like the introduction of vortexes and how they're weaving their ways into the Ease lives. Chapter 9. Fudd is on top of the water walls, kind of scouting the area and playing in the jungle. Then she has to go back to the shops and meet Verdandi. This is when she makes an order for Gaizus about a special dress. She wants to basically look like Aralove, to pretend that she's Aralove. So she's like planning to dye her hair, wear the same clothes, all that stuff. She ends up meeting Amarasi, who Ilva has befriended, but Amarasi is like a well-tuned kid that reminds the sisters of Fudd. And it's just like this weird weird kid. And they, the sisters have come back from classes with these teachers, so they're basically like learning about Current Canyon. So Fudd's not going to classes, she's not hanging out with people, she's not socializing, she's going to the jungle instead, and then she like indirectly learns about life from the sisters. That's how she learns about how to get to the jungle, what the scouts do in the jungle, learns about the elementals, this guy Feviech, stuff like that. And then they go back to Wobbly and decide to live at Wobbly instead of anywhere else. So they have a picnic under the giant tree, and there's a crab that lives in the tree. At 4, this is the first jungle, the first vortex. She goes to follow the place that she felt Airlove leaving over these water walls to get to the jungle, so she follows the same route. She ditches Ruckus, tells him to stay there, and then she ends up running into, like, the scouts find her. They're like, hey, what are you doing in here? So they give her the proper gear and stuff to go do a core in the jungle. A vortex can have a certain amount of cores, like 1 to 4 or something cores, which is like just an elemental force in it that's kind of conjuring it up. And Fudd goes after a 1 core vortex in the jungle, and it's kind of like you have to get to the center of it, to the core, and then tune to it and like dissolve its qualities, basically, like reassemble it. It's almost like elementals have tangled up and created this mass, and you have to go in there and be well tuned enough that you like match its qualities and absorb its energy in a way.
This is like McMaster stuff.
Yeah.
Like the game.
Yeah.
Was it called the core at the beginning, like the center?
Yeah, crossing core. There are crossings later when they go into the multi-core, and a crossing happens when you're like not tuned up enough, and this thing starts to absorb you instead, and it becomes like you. So Fudd goes in there, and it's an easy one, but it's an introduction to like what a vortex looks like when it goes well, and what the scouts instruct Fudd to play with. But Fudd is also pretending that she's dumb and doesn't know the languages yet because she doesn't really, and she's like, she's like, I'm just gonna go do it, no problem. And the scouts are like, make sure you do things. She's like, okay, and then doesn't do them. Chapter 11. So she's been doing this a few times, and she gets booted out of the jungles. They're now watching for her. She's vows to beat everything in Current Canyon and beat the E's and all that other stuff. She goes back to Gaizus, and he's now in the habit of leaving dresses out for her. She misses the silver crab courses in the morning often, and doesn't go to classes with the sisters, but meets them all and like learns about stuff. Ilva's been chasing Airlove every day, but Airlove's made of fire, so it doesn't work. Verdandi and Ilva got to go through caverns, which is like the second stage of the silver crab course. During an advanced course, and Fudd has yet to get to see that because she's only showed up for beginner classes because she misses most of them. So she's like, who's the teachers during advanced courses? That because they only do advanced courses if they have enough people that are really skilled. So like one of the times there's enough skilled people that they could go further down the course. So Fudd's like, I need to know who these skilled people are. Then Ilva wants to do one of Fudd's deliveries, and it's through Merkstem, but Ilva got like really sticky. It's in that matted vortex area that Fudd went to earlier, and Ilva's just like coated in gunk and like impossible to get it off. So Fudd gives her a little lesson on how to deal with qualities and tune up and stuff. And while they're doing that, a vortex sphere that Emeraldu made, which is something that Fudd tried to do earlier. It's kind of like what Feviech was. Emeraldu made like a little sphere, and there's a crab living on it, and it like floats through the valleys, and it finally comes to them, and they like bring it up to Wobbly, and they like study it. Chapter 12. Fudd rests after some morning vortexes. I think this is the one where I made it. It says Fudd's watch. Scouts watch for her now, but I think this is the scene maybe where Theo actually has to escort Fudd out of the jungle now, because if they just tell Fudd to leave, she might not. Fudd returns to the farm, learns how to do farming stuff. She's working with Gem in the soil, and it's kind of like learning about their past a bit, because they haven't chatted much and stuff. Ilva likes bugs. Verdandi's getting good at tuning stuff. They go and see what Gem's house is like. Arilo's going to come back and give them a lesson on stuff. And when she arrives, she feels really tuned up, like even more so than before. And then Fudd finds out that she came back from an island. She's like, I gotta go find this island. Arilove demonstrates some stuff, like making animals out of elements and reshaping things. And Fudd says that she's going to help Ilva chase down Airlove. So then there's a scene where they're basically chasing Airlove through the fire valleys, or through the valleys while Airlove is fire. They never even come close, but Fudd can tell what Airlove's doing. So that one's all about like learning how life on the farm works, Gem's house, Gem's family, and Airlove being a beast is. Another jungle one. Fudd goes back to the jungle. She's like in competition mode, like I need to level up and beat all these people. So she's sharpening her skills. Did she bring Ruckus? Yeah, she brings Ruckus, and she tracks a Gullen, like one of those giant crabs, to go things, and then the Gullen disappears. And then she finds somebody who's not a scout, kind of like her, Habon, who just beat a multicore vortex. And she thinks Habon is Feviach, the person people are talking about, because she's well-tuned, and then Habon's like flattered, but it's like, no, that's Feviach, and that freaking storm comes over to the valleys, and comes across the jungle, and then Feviach joins them. Fudd is like scared and shocked and stuff, but Ruckus is happy, and so it's like, okay, this must be okay. And then they say to leave the area for the day, so Fudd agrees. Is like, okay. And then she like tunes and feels the Gullen and stuff, and she thinks they're just going back to do more multicore vortexes, which is what Fudd has been after. So she's like, no, I'm not going. You're just taking the multicores for yourself. So she goes back in there, but she's so tuned to competition that she's basically like inviting things that are dangerous and like going to battle her. And then Ruckus gets scared and confused, and then the scouts show up, and a Gullen battles a giant beetle, and a giant snake chases her, and the scouts help her escape. A bunch of nuts. Yeah. This Fudd is back in town. She's being sneakier now. She's like, okay, I can't do competition directly. I gotta be like sneaky and stealthy. She ends up spying on Airlove and Emeraldu a lot, and one of the things she sees Airlove do is split a boulder in half and then refuse the boulder back together. So Fudd checks out what Airlove was doing in the garden and stuff like that, but Airlove returns and knew that Fudd was lurking and chasing and sneaking around. Fudd sneaks away to go try making water creatures and doing all the things that she's seen everybody else do. She's basically trying to sneak around and like hide in places in the farm and do the things that she's seen everybody else do. And then Airlove says that if Fudd beats the Silver Crab course, then she'll become Fudd's primary teacher or show Fudd where the island is and stuff like that. And then Fudd's like, I'm going to go find that island before I beat the Silver Crab course to beat Airlove. Then next one, somewhere there's Raimi. So basically, Fudd's at the shops, and this is where she learns about Raimi, who's she's on a scouting term, and the term is ending. So Raimi's going to return to the farm for a little while. Then they're going to go to Few and Reddle's classes, and Fudd's like, I need to level up, obviously, so I'm going to go to these classes too and see what's up. So she goes with sisters, and Gem comes to the classes. Then they ask Few and Reddle to do a class on the Silver Crab course, so Fudd's going to join for that too. And then they have to team up for projects, so Fudd and Gem are going to team up and do a ridiculous project. The project is like, what is something that theoretically should be possible, but isn't possible, and how are you going to try and do it? Okay, so it's like perfect right up Fudd's alley. I think the project they ended up trying to do is something like, how do we stop time using qualities or something, like stupid stuff like that. And then Jihu arrives. This is almost like the halfway point through the book. And Fudd is still tuned to challenge and competition and all this other stuff. She goes to the advanced Silver Crab course for the first time, gets to do the advanced one, because Few and Reddle and Halibay and a bunch of other people are there, like all the top people, like Gem and Emeraldu. So all the people are there, so they're like, we can go quite far today. We can go all the way to the waterfalls. So they're going to go down like a bunch of chunks. And this girl, Jihu, is there, and Leanne. And Jihu they can't figure out what who showed up for. But continuation. Where were we? Jungle. Oh, right. Jihu and Leanne arrive. So they go through Glassy, and Fudd follows Jihu. Jihu's kind of ignoring Fudd at this point. Jihu's just there. You find out later in the book that she actually just goes to like the best courses around and just like beats them all. She basically travels with Fevietch when Fevietch is like a mission. She's like, fine, just go to a town and like win the course. So Jihu's kind of ignoring Fudd, but Jihu found out from Fevietch and all these meetings and stuff that the E's are the ones that are kind of in charge of watching over Fevietch or making sure he doesn't do like messed up stuff or whatever. Like all this stuff that's subtly hinted at, that I don't want to point it directly, but it'll probably be the thing that at the end of revisions, we're just going to go through and like have the sisters loosely mention that Emeraldu has to watch over some guy, who's the guy at Fevietch or whatever, and then like subtly hint later, like little notes that Jihu is related to Abon and Fevietch somehow, and things like that. So it's like it's all loosely in the background connected. So what's actually going on is Jihu found out that the E's are in charge of taking care of Fevietch. So Jihu's like, who the hell are the E's? Like, they shouldn't, who's as good as Fevietch? It doesn't even make sense. So she's coming to this course to see Emeraldu, so Jihu's paying more attention to the teacher. Fudd just thinks because this person's really good, so of course she's coming to a course. Of course she's paying attention to Emeraldu because he's a teacher and he's really good. But then Jihu does find out later that Fudd is also meeting Habon and Fevietch in the jungle, so Jihu starts to pay more attention to Fudd. Right. And Fudd is also trying to get on Jihu's nerves, so she'll get attention too, because Fudd wants to rival. So they're, Halbe, Fio, Riddle, Emeraldu, they're all helping the class because it's an advanced class, so it's pretty hard. But Fudd is just following Jihu around. They're going through Glassy, and Fudd has a bunch of wow moments I wrote here. Leanne just doesn't use his hands ever. Yeah, it's like, that's cool. But Jihu has like sneaky skills. Wrote a few things here, like Fudd launches, sphere creatures, perception altering, things like that. And then they go into caverns, and Fudd chases Jihu through caverns to waterfalls and barely keeps up. And it's like a really difficult route and difficult things that Jihu's gone down, but Fudd manages to follow. Jihu's more interested in Current Canyon than Fudd, and it annoys Fudd. And then by the end of it, Jihu still isn't paying attention to Fudd, but has at least noticed her because Fudd followed her. It's like, well, okay, this kid went on a tough route. And then Jihu leaves really quick, like as soon as the course is done. And then, so she never meets Airlove, and Airlove is late, so shows up late, so Jihu and Airlove never get to meet. This one, Fudd is on a tear. She goes to do a multi-core vortex solo in the jungle and doesn't bring ruckus. She's annoyed at Jihu and annoyed at Gem and annoyed at everything. She's not able to beat anybody yet, and she needs to find a teacher, needs to find an island, stuff like that. And then she injures herself pretty bad. She falls inside a vortex. It's something along the lines of like, basically falls into like a black hole gravitational sphere and smacks into a bunch of things, etc. Gets really injured, kind of almost dies, and then scouts save her. So that's like just a couple quick scenes of just her going in there and getting injured real fast. Then pretty big chapter of just slice and life stuff where she's recovering in a scout camp. So you get to see what a scout camp is like. She's been there out for 9 days, almost recovered. There's no Raimi there. Raimi's term has ended, so she's back in town already. Fio is on a scouting term, so she's around. A bunch of people come to visit her. Gem visits her, and they have a long chat about like the past and like where Fudd came from. So you finally get to learn a bit of Fudd's backstory, like why is she, like where are her parents? What is she doing out here? They share techniques with each other, like secret techniques. This is kind of like the first time that Fudd actually explains her electroreceptivity to anybody, because they kind of guess but don't really know. Gem pretends. He pretends to stay in Fudd's tent so that the scouts think that Gem is watching over Fudd, so that Fudd can actually sneak out and sneak around. So like Gem is gonna leave. And he's like, I'll pretend I'm still here, so the scouts don't bother you, so you can go sneak out. And then Fudd goes around and she finds like witches, and scouts are helping mermaids and giants and like weird stuff like that around this tent, around this area. Then she returns to the valleys. With, I think, this is the one where Fio escorts her again. This might be the second time. And then she gets a dress, but Gaizus, it's been like 9 days or whatever, but Gaizus now has like a section set up for Fudd with her dress. Like, just after like a long period of time, 9 days, things, it's like you find out that Verdandi entered competitions and won some things around Bozostone. Like, Fudd's catching up on stuff. And Ilva made something cool in a decoration class and things like that. And then Fudd comes back and she finds out that the sisters have now become full-on rivals with Jiu. So Fudd's like, yes. And then Act 7, Jihu has returned and is showing off in these trials. It's another advanced class. Jihu and the sisters are going at it. Throws Ilva in a puddle. Jihu and Verdandi are blasting each other repeatedly. Ilva doesn't like Emeraldi, who he almost has like they almost have more of a rivalry. It's like when you have some Luigi nonsense, Ace Ventura, whatever character, and then a kid who's just like, tell me straight up what to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. So they can't deal with each other. Then Fudd takes Jihu's hard path through the caverns again, but impresses Jihu enough that Jihu like takes her as a worthy challenger. And then by the end of it, they actually end up, kind of befriending each other and stuff. And Fudd and Leanne discover that they speak the same language, like back from where Fudd lived. Leanne actually knows her language, so it's like the first time that you get to hear Fudd talk in a way that is like what the narration voice would be like. Because when she speaks to people, she skips a lot of words and that type of thing. So it's like the first time she has a conversation that nobody else understands except Leanne, but they get to speak in their own language. And that's when Leanne really discovers how crazy Fudd is.
And the audience, or the reader.
Yeah. Chapter 20. Fudd is slacking on the job. She's like almost relieved that she has a rival and Erlov has challenged her and offered her things and stuff like that. So Fudd's slacking. Fudd is caught slacking by Gem. Fudd is supposed to be delivering plants on the course, but Gem finds her nodding off. And then they go meet Raimi, because Fudd is yet to meet Raimi. Raimi is in full scout mode still. Like, she's just ridiculously athletic and well-tuned and stuff like that, but super lazy. And like the first thing that she does is chug a huge amount of a drink and then feels sick, and then to go to do a delivery to the markets and hang out there, and she eats way too much and ends up feeling sick again. She's like, who is this Raymond person? It's Fudd slacking off and being lazy, and then meeting a really lazy person. Chapter 21. This is the first time Fudd actually calls home. She goes into a cliffs on like a calm pond, and Ruck is with her, and has a nice casual trip in the jungle without going into a vortex to blow things up. Jihu finds Fudd at Wobbly, so Jihu returns, but instead of going straight to the course or whatever, she finds Fudd, and they have a little battle on Wobbly. This is kind of Jihu is indirectly, but kind of also directly trying to recruit Fudd to join her with Fevietch and stuff instead, to abandon the sisters and everything else and like come with her because they're more well-tuned and Fudd can keep up. And then Jihu challenges Fudd and the sisters to beat a multi-core together, because then they'll, Jihu won't bother them anymore. So as the sisters are going out to get everything prepped with scouts to be like, find us a multi-core, the scouts will set it up that here's a multi-core that you can do and we won't interfere, etc. Fudd instead goes to dye her hair in the ponds and get a dress to look like Airlove and all this other stuff. And then she ends up going to meet Gem and with Raimi, and they go explore these rapids. She races Raimi through the rapids, races Gem through the rapids. Fudd cheats a bunch, but she still loses. But she's a cheater in general. They race Raimi once, and Raimi would win, but she's too lazy, so she stops. So Fudd and Gem are like, what's wrong with you? And then instead, Fudd and Gem race, and Fudd cheats, but Gem still wins. And then Fudd and Gem have a long talk in the rapids about like their future of finding a Gigashin, finding the island, just like what their plans are coming up with all of all the nonsense coming on. Fudd is waiting for the sisters to return from the scout meet with all the things set up, so she ends up hanging out with Denda, and this is when she kind of finds out that Denda is a witch. She basically hangs out in the decoration class with her new hair and dress and stuff, and she's had suspicions about Denda being a witch, and Denda kind of confirms it. And then they have their class with Theo and Redel about their ridiculous projects of like stopping time or whatever. And then Amarasi and Ilva have a ridiculous project, and a few other pairs of characters present their projects to their school class or whatever, and they're all ridiculous. Then sisters pack and leave for the jungle, so it's basically them at Wobbly packing up with Gem and Raimi helping, and then them going to the jungle and meeting Sharmarke and Theo and stuff to get float pads ready and get all the gear so they can go across the ocean to a multicore vortex. And this is almost like the nostalgic, they're on a float pad again on the ocean for the first time since the beginning of the book. And now they're, instead of looking for a beacon tower, they're looking for a multicore vortex. So they're it's almost like them learning how much they've leveled up. And then Verdandi explodes some of her clothes by trying to do things that she saw Halibay do, and Fudd makes a rock suit because she's secretly been practicing how to shape things, and just fun stuff like that. They see a bunch of like sunken cities and just weird stuff in the jungle of Kern Canyon. And instead of using the gear to find things, Fudd uses a gullen and tracks just a giant hermit crab instead. So Verdandi's like, we gotta use this gear to find the multicore vortex. And it's like, Fudd's just like, gullens, go right to it, I'm good. She's been doing it for so long, she knows how to do it. They find the vortex, they prep to go in it. Fudd is doing her core, like it's a multi-core, so it's 3 cores. And Fudd is doing hers when she feels a crossing form of each of the sisters. So she has to hurry up and finish hers. So she tunes hers really fast. And then she goes to Verdandi's, and they have to like... Verdandi's is like on a bunch of swinging rocks flying through the sky and stuff like that. So they do some like almost pirate shit, swinging around shenanigans. Finish that one. And then they go find Ilva, and Ilva has trapped herself in like a stasis barrier while a bunch of things are shooting at her, but it can't get to her and she can't get out. So they have to go... save Ilva, and then Ilva, Verdandi and Ilva escape, and then Fudd just takes the whole thing and crushes the whole thing, just like, and like crushes basically the entire region, and then Verdandi's like, this is why people are afraid of you. Because Fudd doesn't really know that people are afraid of her, loosely, but kind of. Then build up to self-destruct, so they... go back, and Jihu has returned and has accepted them as challengers, and etc. So Jihu will now pay attention to them and plans, those accepts that okay, they're worth her attention. Fudd unloads her gear. This is when you kind of like it's mentioned repeatedly throughout that Fudd has a lot of things on her all the time, like all of her belts, and then she finally ends up taking all that off to do an advanced course because this is actually going to be it's a race, like a competition on the course for the first time. Instead of just like we're going through and you practice things, it's actually going to be like a race competition. So they have to team up into trios and go through it. And Fudd has to not use all of her gear. So she takes it all off, and you realize that she's been using like gravity manipulation type stuff and qualities to like hold her gear up, because when she puts it all off, or like she drops her tuning of that and then gets Gem and Verdandi to lift her and they can't. So she takes off all of her gear. It's like one of those scenes where just infinite guns coming out and just piles it all on. And she has like weird stuff like, stalagmites that she's wrapped in cloth and weird things like, why do you have us? Verdandi and Jihu bet to hurt each other. Like they're going to actually try and hurt each other. Ilva is attacking Emeraldu. They get uniforms. Denda, Halibay, and Emeraldu are going to be the spotters. Raimi and Denda arrive late. they have signups. Fudd is kind of being flirty with Gem, so Ji-Hoo is being flirty with Gem, and Ji-Hoo's kind of winning, and Fudd's like, I don't know how to do this. Leanne, Fudd, and Raimi, you find out that Raimi also knows Fudd's native language, and also kind of already knows that Fudd is crazy. So Emeraldo teams them together, because they all speak the same language. It's like, oh, you're on a team, and they're all like, dang it. So Fudd also indirectly, and Rettel also joins in with their language and tells them some basics about the course. But Fudd, this is where Fudd finds out that Ji-Hoo is actually famous and goes around to all these courses and beats them all. And Ji-Hoo, or Leanne, who never gets to compete with Ji-Hoo, is like, I also want to beat Ji-Hoo, so this is fine. I'll beat Ji-Hoo. They activate currents, and this is the first time that you see Silver Crab in full motion, because most of the time it's kind of like in a steady thing where, if you go into glassy, it's like whatever, you do glassy. But when you activate the currents, the whole thing turns into this malleable soup. Like basically the currents of qualities flow through it more, and all of the course is now this active, messy, it looks like a vortex. It's no longer just, you work with it, it's a vortex of stuff lying around. Full on pill of reality nonsense. And then Fudd realizes how much the sisters have really improved. Like, when they went into the course, she never really got to see what the sisters were doing in the course on their side. So this is like on the course, because the sisters have been to the course so much more than her. She realizes how good the sisters have actually gotten, and how much like the other teachers have taught her things. The next chapter is Caverns Crush. They're in Caverns. Few and Rettel combo abilities, and they're just way better than everybody. Ji-Hoo's really good. She can keep up with the teachers and stuff. Fudd dislikes teams because she wants to solo Ji-Hoo. So she's like, how do I just beat this whole thing? Raimi and Leanne want to beat Ji-Hoo for their own reasons. Raimi ate too much, so she can't really do much. She's feeling sick. Leanne thinks Fudd is crazy. Fudd is going to do something that's going to help Raimi and Leanne win if they do this stuff. So what he ends up doing is completely destroying Caverns and Waterfall, doing the same crush thing where she just crushes everything. In the process, she ends up kind of destroying herself. And Britannia's like, this is why everybody's afraid of you. She passes out and doesn't even see how the game ends. Then, next chapter, the sisters force Fudd to relax, get her to just chill out and recover. They're hanging out with Denda a bit. Word has spread that the Fudd and Ji-Hoo are challenging each other, and are going to set up some kind of competition on the course, which they've not told anybody. But because the sisters have talked to people about it so much and all this other stuff, that the rumor has just spread that they are going to do something, even though that was not ever implied. It's just they challenge each other on the course and whatever, and rumor just spread. So now everybody's wants to see Fudd and Ji-Hoo go at it. Emeraldo gives Fudd some tips. They have a class trip to see ponds and fairies and caves and shrines and castles and stuff. They want to go visit the rapids, so they go to the rapids, but the rapids are closed because the whole current canyon's getting a little messed up. They don't know why. Raimi is in on it as a scout, so she can't really tell them much. So instead of going to the rapids, Fudd packs up to go to the island instead. So they have a little picnic and kind of say their byes to Fudd. Arilov's been gone for a while. Fudd assumes Arilov's on the island, so Fudd leaves for the island. Yeah. They have a little picnic in the ponds and stuff. So it's kind of a few climaxes that end the book. Yeah, this page is just the climaxes. So the first climax is Fudd gets to the island below Coleus, the floating island, and does one crossing, realizes that Ruckus can't come with her, so sends Ruckus away, and then does a crossing herself, but ends up almost drowning. And then wakes up and Ruckus is with her, I was thinking of doing a point of view chapter from Ruckus's point of view, which would be kind of weird to throw in the middle of this.
I was just thinking about the elementals and wondering, is there going to be a chapter with Emeraldu's point of view or Fiviach at some point or whatever? And
took them all out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be kind of cool to have a bonus chapter of them because, like, there are scenes where, like, even just bonus chapters not in the book, but, like, you can find them free on the website or something, where it's, like, Emeraldu at a scout meeting with the sisters and Gem there or something, because Fudd never goes to any of those, and it'd be kind of cool to see that. Or Feviach teaching Jihu and Hebon and Leanne on, like, a floating island or somewhere, like, doing one of their missions. Airlove going to meet a Gigashin. Like, some of those chapters would be really cool, and they have nothing to do with Fudd. And so it'd be kind of cool, like... Yeah. So Fudd wakes up with Ruckus. Doesn't know how Ruckus is there, but she's kind of injured, but ends up doing a multi-core vortex herself anyway. Tuning up, and she ends up doing a Snowy, which is the fourth thing. There's glassy caverns, waterfalls, snow, and those aren't the names of them, but that's what Fudd calls them. And the last one is, as Gem explains, it's like a sea of stars that you have to like sail across, and like it's like, you know, you'll sink and just pass out and fall into the river on the bottom and go back. Like you can't deal with it, and Fudd ends up basically surfing on it. So she's like, I beat Gem. So that's like the main thing there. Fudd ends up on the island, and she finds Noah's house. So her and Ruckus are playing along the shore. They find Noah's not home. When she's leaving, Feviach shows up, and then Feviach brings her underwater to meet a Gigashin, and then Feviach leaves. She returns to the mainland, and immediately the sisters and Jihu are going at it. They're just like in the town, and Fudd officially challenges Jihu to beat her on Silver Crab. They sign up for things. They put up posters. Random, all the locals and stuff are pretty excited because Fudd is known as the crazy person, and Jihu is kind of famous. So they prep for Silver Crab and the challenges, and then the Glassy Challenge starts. So, going through glassy caverns and waterfalls, the main things are Fudd tries to cheat, but realizes that Leanne is also a cheater. Fudd and Jihu are ahead of the group in caverns, Jihu gets ahead of the group in caverns and messes the place up with all these like weird things everywhere, and Fudd bypasses it by launching herself up to the like floating islands to go around the giant vortex that Jihu made, and it's like super dangerous. But the people spotting it are Denda, Raimi, and Halbe, I think, and they're watching and just being like, "What the fuck is Fudd doing? She could die." Ilva ambushes Jihu out of the waterfalls. Ilva has basically learned how to erase herself from perception and then appear randomly. Fudd crushes the whole course to get out of a bad position when everybody is battling each other, but her, Leanne, or who escapes here? Everybody except Jihu and Gem escape, and Ilva fell off earlier, so she's still catching up through the course. So Leanne, Verdandi, and Fudd all gone. Leanne, she's with Leanne in the river, and she launches herself back up to the bottom of caverns to go around the vortex from underneath. And then she races through waterfalls to catch up to Gem and Jihu. They can't find ways to get into the Snowy. So when Verdandi catches up, Fudd makes a giant rock suit from the broken platform that she crushed to get through Jihu's barrier so they can pass it. And Ilva's thrown off because she's trying to solo it aggressively again. Jihu makes a fire suit, destroys Fudd's rock suit. Gem and Fudd team up to stop Jihu from stopping them. They end up in Snowy. Verdandi, Leanne, and Ilva are all carried away by the river. They can't deal with this. They go through Snowy together, but Gem and Fudd can't... let's see. So Gim and Jihu sync, so Fudd goes back for them. After Gim and Fudd couldn't compete with Jihu, they try going in all together. Fudd ends up carrying Jihu and Gim, but she can't beat it. She can't beat it alone, but she can't also carry them while beating it. So they're kind of at a stalemate. And then Fudd has like almost a dream of Erlov and Feviet showing up, but then they all just reappear on the starting platform. The scouts and everybody else just see that they got tossed out of Snowy, out like into the Sea of Stars, and then appeared back at the beginning. But Fudd, Gem, and Jihu all remember Erlov and Feviet showing up and helping. Fudd is like, I know what I'm going to try to do later, and everybody's like, what? Don't do anything stupid. Erlov, Fudd is resting in the ponds, and Erlov shows up and warns Fudd that Noah, the teacher on the island, is going to leave soon, secretly with HH, and it's Fudd's last chance to go meet Erlov's teacher. So they go to Wobbly, and they hear that Emeraldo and Habon also had an epic competition on some other course. They say bye to Jihu at Wobbly and stuff like that. And Erlov and Fevietch and a few others all leave. Sisters vow to get better so they can keep up with Fudd. And then the epilogue is kind of like Fudd is chasing Erlov, and her and Fevietch were off to return elementals together. There's all the scouts watching there, keeping their distance. And Fudd goes with Erlov and Fevietch to meet a Gigashin. And then when after that, she's like, alright, I'm off to the island. Peace! Oh, I have a little note here. Gem and Jihu took a chance to learn before Noah left too, so they're both on the island when Fudd gets there. Or something like that. Yeah, just some kind of epilogue like that. Yeah, that's the whole book.
Well, and then Fudd is...
Yeah.
Goes with Noah.
Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. Yeah, some kind of epilogue where it's like, oh, the main characters go to see the teacher somehow. Yeah. Like at the end of World 26, Annabelle gets a message that Vimir is signing up to be on their block. Like things like that. So it's kind of like the main character is about to meet the HH person for the first time.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to end it.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever, It's epic.
Yeah. So that's the whole book. So we pick like some chunk in there to bring to its finished level.
Yeah.
And then we just come up with basically fresh the equivalent scenes in the others. So like the other stories were World 18, so Avent. Gatler is mostly at Stellar Academy, but sometimes goes to like Silhouette the Moon Base or random missions and stuff. It's kind of the same thing where Fudd is mostly in these valleys and then sometimes goes to the jungle, sometimes somewhere else. Yeah. So it's like the same structure. We can come up with like an equivalent scene of Fudd destroyed herself. What is a version of Gatler destroyed itself?
I was thinking the scene where Feviet shows up in a storm and she's with Jihu.
Habon?
When Fudd's with... Oh, Habon, I guess, yeah. And she thinks Habon is Feviet.
Right.
And then Feviet shows up. Maybe that would be a good section.
Chapter 13. Sorry. Act 4, Chapter 13. Cool. So 5 scenes. What does it note on us? Act 4, Chapter 13. Something doesn't go well. POV discovers or tries something. There's a setback of what would be a big step. Turns out to be little or disappointing instead. So yeah, Fuzz out to find a multi-core. She's going to go do one finally, and then Habon beats it. And then meets Fevietch and all that junk. And then tries to go back to do a multi-core again, but is too tuned to competition and all sorts of other stuff, and gets booted out of the jungle, and scouts have to come save her, get her out of there. So, an equivalent scene of... we also had those other elements in there, like mistaking somebody for somebody else. Getting rescued in some form. So, if we take World 18...